Welcome to our tonight events. 欢迎大家参加我们今晚的活动。I wish I could speak Vietnamese. Okay, our audience are tuning in. Okay, let's get started. Hey, my name is Michelle Zhang. I'm founder of Society of Heart's Delight, in Chinese, 愚园社. And our mission is to promote in-depth communication and connection between Chinese immigrants and people from diverse backgrounds in order to strengthen inclusivity, belonging, and solidarity in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have been partnering with many local nonprofit organizations, ethnic communities, and local governments. Recently, we have been awarded the master agreement with the city of San Jose to take on some of their community outreach work. After nearly 4 years of building our community, 愚园社 has become a magnet attracting Chinese immigrants throughout the Bay Area. I'm proud to say that we are now the most active Chinese immigrant organization in the South Bay. Not San Francisco yet, but we are getting there. Today is our great honor to host this informative event with 3 of our very own Asian American Bay Area County Supervisors. Our co-hosts are Civic Leadership USA and the API Coalition. Andy Lee is the president of both organizations and is a prominent civic leader in our San Francisco Bay Area. In 2014, Andy founded the Trial Valley chapter of APAPA in the San Francisco Bay Area and served as chapter president through 2017. His hard work and commitment to the community led to his promotion to president of APAPA Bay Area region in 2018 and president of APAPA California in 2020. In 2018, Andy was elected as Contra Costa Community College District Trustee. He served as board vice president for the first 2 years and was elected by the board to serve as president in 2021. He's also a board member of the leadership San Ramon Valley program and a board member of Discovery Counseling Center of the San Ramon Valley. And there's a little more I want to share about him. He has been invited to the White House to meet our president, and the 2 organizations he leads were praised by our Vice President Kamala Harris just recently. So I find this very inspiring. So I have to share it. Andy, please share some words with us. You're muted. Andy, you're muted.
Okay, another technical problem. Thank you so much, Michelle, for the introduction. And we're so glad to co-host this event with Society of Hearts and Delight, also called 愚园社 in Chinese. And also, I want to thank Supervisor Connie Chen, Otto Lee, and Lena Tan for attending this event to be the speaker. And of course, thank Wendy Ho, longtime friend, for being the moderator, and also thank everyone for participating. And I told many people, a lot of people are very active. They know the city government, school district, and the state government very well. But regarding to county, very few people know county really well. But the county really has play an important role in our life, in our community. They have a huge budget, at least maybe $15 billion up to maybe $100 billion. And another thing is I want the county supervisor to share is they each have a budget for the community. They can make a decision, but a lot of us don't know. Hopefully we can learn from them. And then in the future, we can apply the funding from them and use the funding to support, empower our community. So I just wish everyone enjoy the time, and thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. So today we are really happy to have our Wendy Ho as our moderator. Wendy is a prominent moderator. Oh, more than that. Wendy is a community advocate and a civic leader with over 15 years of experience working on public policy at a local, state, and federal levels. Currently, Wendy serves as Chief of Staff to our Santa Clara County Supervisor, Otto Lee. Prior to her current role, the majority of Wendy's career was in the nonprofit sector, serving mostly recently as the Chief Strategy and Policy Officer for the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofit. We are their member too. Her experience also includes policy rules with United Way Silicon Valley, the Asian Pacific Islander American Health Forum, and the US Congress. Committed to public service, Wendy has served on the San Jose Evergreen Community College District Board of Trustees since 2012. So Wendy and Andy, you both are all elected officials too. Wow, super. Well, what an inspiration. We are truly lucky to have such a great AAPI representation in your San Francisco Bay Area. And without further ado, Wendy, the mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Andy, for the kind introduction, and welcome to all of you who are tuning in tonight, who are here to learn more about county government. As Andy mentioned, people know a lot about kind of schools and cities, but you don't hear a whole lot about counties. And so what we hope to do tonight is demystify what counties do and how they serve residents. And we're so honored to have an esteemed panel of county supervisors representing 3 different counties here tonight with us. And we're going to get to know each of them a little bit throughout the evening. And hopefully a Supervisor Tam from Alameda County will be joining us shortly. But we're going to kick things off first and have just a very, hopefully easy question for the 2 supervisors who have joined us so far. And we'll start off with Supervisor Chan. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to pursue county service. Supervisor Chan.
Thank you, Wendy. It's really great to be with all of you this evening. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to really speak with the AAPI connection outside of San Francisco. I was born in Hong Kong and I grew up in Taiwan. I came to San Francisco's Chinatown when I was 13 years old. And so since then, I just grew up in the city, went to a local high school, a public high school in San Francisco, and then UC Davis. And after that, I came home and I just started my work in city government. I was very fortunate to start a community organizing in San Francisco first, and really around public safety issue with San Francisco Safe. Then I landed my first gig in City Hall, inside of San Francisco City Hall, as a legislative aide to Supervisor Sophie Maxwell, who has been a prominent Black leader in San Francisco, but really in her district, including Viz Valley and Bayview in San Francisco at that time when I started working for her, was really a migration of Chinese and AAPI immigrants into the area that has traditionally been Black community. And so there was a lot of conflict. There was a lot of cultural differences that I was able to do translation work and interpreted interpretation work to really bridge that gap. Later on, I moved on to work for Kamala Harris when she was district attorney in San Francisco. And for those probably know that now she's our vice president of the United States. So I'm really, grateful to have the experience working for her. And since then, I just work in, different city departments like San Francisco Recreation and Park Department and City College of San Francisco. So I almost have like 20 years of public service and in city government in San Francisco. And when the time came, Sandra Lee Fiore was my predecessor in San Francisco representing the Richmond district. She decided not to run for re-election, and she has asked me to run. But that conversation particularly, though, is this, that she really believed that we need to continue to have AAPI and Chinese representation, not just in the Richmond, but really on the board supervisor in San Francisco. For those of you who don't know, as it turns out, at the moment when she asked me to run, at that time, there was 3 supervisors representing Chinese and AAPI community on the board supervisors. In a short 3 years, I am now the only one, only Chinese and AAPI member of the board. Another citywide supervisor representing the AAPI community is Supervisor Asha Safai, but it's been very challenging. So here I am, and really pleased to join you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Chan, and certainly, being the only AAPI member of the board certainly has its challenges, but we're so glad that you're there. Same question for you, Supervisor Lee. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to pursue county service.
Well, good evening, everybody. Yes, this is Otto Lee. Truly an honor to be speaking with all of you tonight. The journey to Santa Clara County Supervisor has not been an easy one for me. This is actually my second run, and my first one was about 12 years ago. Came in second, and actually did it again after the current incumbent turned out and became a state senator, Dave Platezzi. The fun fact is that even though I lost to him that election, thereafter we actually became really good friends, and that certainly is one of those good examples that you could run against each other and still maintain a good friendship to serve the public, because we have very similar values and things that we support. So I was originally an immigrant from Hong Kong, and at the age of 15, after the China decided to take back Hong Kong. If you recall, back then Hong Kong was a British colony. We were not exactly fond of the communists, so we okay, it's time to get out of here. And so we actually, my family decided to move, so we actually moved to the People's Republic of Berkeley. So that makes a lot of sense. I think they're frankly more communists right now these days, true communists to the Marxist stories than China, because as we know how that's been changed these days. In any case, I grew up in Berkeley. I went to Berkeley High School, graduated, and went to UC Berkeley. Also went through the Navy ROTC program, and then became commissioned in the U.S. Navy after my last exam in nuclear engineering, and served a couple of years of active duty as a supply officer on board a cruiser, doing dispersing, which means I had to save of $500,000 U.S. cash, the U.S. Treasury checks that you get. If you're lucky enough to get a cash refund, the one with Lady Liberty on there, I have 2 boxes of those blank checks in my safe, and making sure everybody gets paid twice a month on the ship. A fairly big responsibility, shall we say, for a 23-year-old, and certainly a good way to learn a lot of leadership, and eventually came back to the Bay Area, went to law school at Hastings in San Francisco, and then been practicing law in the field of intellectual property, which is patents, trademark, copyrights, having my engineering background at Berkeley. And then later on, I actually was working in different companies. After I finished working at Intel, I got this flyer in my mailbox that says, "Hey, go volunteer for your city. You could join a commission." And I looked at it. I said, "Well, arts? No, you don't want me in an arts commission. Trust me. Bikes and pedestrian." And I go through the list under P. Is planning commission. That sounds interesting. Apply for that, got on the planning commission. Eventually, to say, "Hey, you should be good in city council. Go run." So I ran, and actually was one of the first ever elected Chinese American or Asian American on the Sunnyvale City Council. That was back in 2003. Served 8 years. We at the time we did rotation of vice mayor and mayor, so I actually served the year of mayor in 2005 to 2007, and got the moniker as the Green Mayor because I figured during the short time as mayor I'd do something. And after watching the Inconvenient Truth, I said, you know what, this green issue is something that's very big. I recall trying to push as a big issue at the time. We had, interestingly enough, a 7-member city council, all Democrats, hiring a Republican city manager, and said to me, Otto, you know, this green is a fad, right? This green stuff. I said, this is going to be green fad for the next 1,000 years. And as we can see how important this movement of environmental and all the heat, the fire and all the hurricanes and all the crazy weather we're going through obviously are a result of all these climate change that we're suffering. Since then, I was still serving in the Navy Reserve. The year 2009, I actually get sent to Iraq, not by choice. I was voluntold. I didn't volunteer to serve at the headquarters. And eventually, actually, it was when President Obama at that time says we're going to leave Iraq. So I worked as the chief of the logistics drawdown policy to help close lots of bases, over 200 bases while I was there, to make sure that our stuff and our people get home safely. Came back in 2010 and finished serving on city council, and was actually off the politics for a little while, for about 8 years from serving. And then 2020 is when I actually ran again for, like I said, the second time as the supervisor. And fortunately, after a very difficult, bruising primary in the general, and got elected as the first Chinese American ever serving on the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors history. So it's really an honor to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Supervisor Lee. And as you can tell from both supervisors, they have a long and storied history of service to the community. And again, it is such an honor to have them both here to share a little bit more about their experiences. So the next question we have is, you know, I think a lot of people are still wondering, what exactly do county governments do? And in the case of San Francisco, Supervisor Chan, you've got both a city and a county government. So we'll have you illuminate some of that in a little bit. But we'll start with Supervisor Lee this time. And can you just share with us, what do county governments do? And how is it different from, say, your service on the city of Sunnyvale when you were a city council member?
Sure. So let me explain the size and the coverage of our county. The Santa Clara County is actually the largest in terms of population county in Northern California, with almost 2 million people, with 15 towns and cities in our county, from Palo Alto to Milpitas, all the way down to Morgan Hill and Gilroy. With the Silicon Valley being right in the middle of our county, we certainly is also one of the most well-resourced county in the state after LA County. So we're very fortunate of that. When I was running for county supervisor, I remember people said, gee, what do you supervise? Parks? I said, hey, that too. We obviously have county parks, but in addition to supervising parks, there's a lot of other things that county does that the city generally does not cover. The city then generally handles issues relating to, there's certainly the public safety side as the police and fire, those services, along with, they have libraries, land use within the city that we call the incorporated area. And obviously those are also very important issues, but those are the very same issues that we also cover at the county as well, but mostly in the unincorporated areas. In addition to that, one big difference between county and city that a county does that the city doesn't do is relating to healthcare and mental health. So for example, most recently with the pandemic of COVID, that's completely the county's responsibility. This is a position called the public health officer of a county, somebody that not a lot of people knew about. And this is somebody that's hired by the county executive, about like three rings below him. That person actually has a significant amount of power when it comes to public health. So for example, our Dr. Sarah Cody became very famous as one of the very first public health officer of the United States during COVID to basically came out and order the shelter at home order. Shelter at home meaning that everybody needs to stay home. You can't really go outside. When you think about that type of power, right? Mayors cannot overturn that. Congress members cannot overturn that. That's actually a power rested inside the county. And sometimes people actually were challenging her, saying, who are you? You're not elected. How can you make such an order? Because that's under the state law of California, that these public health officer of every county has that type of power to make sure the public is safe. For example, when we had COVID, we didn't know what this thing was, right? We didn't have the antibodies, and people were literally dying, by the thousands a day. And frankly, I would say if New York City has followed our lead when we ordered the shelter in place, had New York City done that like 3 weeks earlier than they did, I truly believe thousands of lives could have been saved. So this is truly an important position at the county level. And then the other thing people don't understand about county, most counties, I think, except your county in the city of San Francisco, which have 11 supervisors, every other county, we have 58 counties, 57 of us, only have 5 supervisors, only 5, regardless of the size. There are small counties, well, small in terms of population, with only a few thousand people, they have 5 supervisors. And you also have Los Angeles County, which has 10 million people with only 5 supervisors, which means in LA County, each supervisor represents 2 million people, which is even more than the size of a congressional district, for example. And right now, like in LA County, 2 of the 5 supervisors were actually former congresswomen, Hilda Solis and Janice Hahn. And you can see how important that position is. For us here in Santa Clara County, we're about 2 million people. For 5 supervisors, we represent each 400,000 residents in each individual district. I represent Sunnyvale, Milpitas, Alviso, and also North San Jose in the Bay area, which is also one of the highest Asian district in our county. And we have numbers of close to over 50% of APA living in our district. And so the work we do at the county is extremely important in the sense that, when we talk about the public safety net, the county really is the safety net for our residents. And when people say, well, I don't really do much with county other than paying my property tax, twice a year, congratulations. That means you really are fortunate enough not having to deal with, because when you deal with the counties, a lot of times might not be the things that you want to. For example, we have our jail, we have our probation department, we have our juvenile hall, right? So we have the justice side of the work that's in the county's purview. And of course, when it comes to, your birth certificate, the death certificate, all those also coming from the county as well. So these are the various things that the county does do every day. But, at the same time, when it comes to our county hospitals, we never turn anybody away. We absolutely accept whether you have insurance, whether you have no insurance, whether you're documented, whether you're not documented. Our county accepts everybody, number one. Number two is we also sanctuary county, meaning that we treat everybody equal. So the fact that you're not documented is not an issue for us in terms of getting services from us. So I believe that's very similar in many ways with Alameda and San Francisco as well. Let the other supervisors to talk about what they do over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lee. And we want to welcome Supervisor Tam from Alameda County. We'll give her a few minutes to introduce herself and what inspired her to pursue county service, and then we'll turn it back to Supervisor Chan to talk a little bit about the unique nature of the city and county of San Francisco and how it's a little bit different than the 57 other counties in our state. So Supervisor Tam, welcome. If you want to say a few words about yourself and what inspired you to pursue county service, that would be terrific.
Thank you, Wendy. I truly apologize for being so late. I just I had some technical issues with the Zoom link, but I ran for county supervisor last year following the unexpected passing of Supervisor Wilma Chan. She represented the area for almost a decade. In this second time around, she had gone to the state assembly, and then she had Supervisor Alice Light Bicker serve in that role when she was in the state assembly. And I said had because she was instrumental in mentoring and grooming many of us within the API community to move into governmental positions. So I had been on the Alameda Healthcare District Board of Directors as chair, and I had also served on the Alameda City Council as vice mayor during the time that Supervisor Chan was in office. And when she passed, it was very traumatic and shocking for our area. We represent Alameda, San Leandro, San Lorenzo, the parts of Oakland that are predominantly Asian, like Oakland Chinatown and Little Saigon. We also have the Fruitvale area, which is primarily Spanish-speaking immigrants. And so those were the areas that felt very, very much in need of a champion that succeeded Supervisor Chan when it came to meeting a lot of the safety net issues that county government that I think Supervisor Otto Lee talked about. You know, we are the ones that make sure whether you're documented or not, whether you have the means or not, that you don't fall through the cracks through our hospital systems. So Alameda has the Highland Hospital, which is a level 1 adult trauma center that is world renowned. And we have 2 hospitals in my district that belong to the county. And then we obviously have Sutter and Kaiser. So what inspired me obviously was making sure that we had the representation in county government. It's all up until Wilma's passing. She was the only woman on the board. It's a 5-member board. She was the only Asian on that board. And I wanted to bring the experience I had within the immigrant community, like translating for my mom, making sure that my parents had access to county healthcare services, and ensuring that access was available to everyone within the county. And that is something that I felt very strongly about and continues to be my North Star as a county supervisor.
Great. Thank you so much, Supervisor Tam, for sharing a little bit about your background and what inspired you to pursue county service, and just reinforcing something of what Supervisor Lee said about really just being that social safety net. I'm going to turn back to Supervisor Chan, if you don't mind. Sorry, Supervisor. Again, the San Francisco is unique in that it's both a city and a county in one consolidated government. Can you share a little bit about how that may be different from what both Supervisor Lee and Supervisor Tam have shared about how traditional county governments operate? Okay, I think perhaps Supervisor Chan stepped away. So we'll pivot to the next question we have for our panel, and we'll start with Supervisor Tam, if that's okay. So day-to-day operations for the county are typically managed by a county executive or a county administrator. Can you share a little bit about what their roles and responsibilities are?
So the county is interesting in that we have department heads that are elected, like the county district attorney, the sheriff, and the county assessor, the county treasurer, the tax collector. So those are department heads that the county administrator works very closely with in bringing forth a very cohesive delivery of services. If you go and see our agenda packet on any Tuesday and our work session on any Thursday, we have like over 170 items sometimes, and they are usually contracts from the various departments, with the healthcare services agency being the biggest. But the county administrator coalesces all of that together and makes sure that it gets the appropriate approvals before the Board of Supervisors, and helps make sure that it meets the requirements under our county charter, under state laws, and our procurement process. And the Board of Supervisors, we obviously need to do our homework, but we review and we render our votes on all of those items.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Tam. And so I think that's an excellent segue. Supervisor Lee, Supervisor Tam just talked a little bit about how the Board of Supervisors work with the county administrator or a county executive. Can you comment a little bit more about kind of that working relationship with the county executive and the Board of Supervisors?
Oh, absolutely. So it was interesting because one time, just to share a funny story with you, I was getting my teeth cleaned, and turns out this individual who was doing the scheduling for it at this dental office that I was going to, she actually works full-time at the county, and she has a part-time gig at the dentist's office. So when she saw me, she said, "Oh, wow, yeah, congratulations, you're now working at the county." I said, "Yeah, I'm working at the county as well." So she asked me, "Oh, do you work for Dr. Smith, the county executive?" I said, "Actually, no, Dr. Smith works for us. We are the supervisor. We hired him." So I think she was very impressed that we are, because basically the title of the county executive is the CEO of the county. And the reason for that is it's somewhat similar to like companies, right? In companies, you have the board of directors, right? And then the board of directors hire the CEO of a company. So you could analogize that the 5 supervisors are like the board of directors in the sense that we are the ones that hire, or at least a majority of us takes a vote, will be the one hiring the county CEO. And the CEO of the county is really the one that runs the day-to-day of the county's operation. So for example, the county might have many different department heads. They might even have these deputy county executive, right? So like a chief operating officer and all these different titles are folks that do different functions of the county, like the heads of Parks and Recreation, the heads of the library, the heads of planning department, all those different departments that we see day to day. Those heads do not report to the Board of Supervisors. They report actually to the chief executive officer, because he's really the big boss that runs the day-to-day issue. And the one thing that's interesting is that, let's say if our Board of Supervisor is not happy with one of the departments, let's say parks. I'm not saying this is the case for us, but let's use an example. Let's say we don't like certain individuals, the Parks Department or the head of the Parks Department that we are not happy with. The Board of Supervisors actually do not have the power to, let's say, fire that individual. Let's use that as an example. The only person that will have that type of power is actually the CEO himself or herself. So if the CEO does not want to, like, is not willing to do that, take that position of firing that individual, the board actually does not have the authority. The only thing the board can do is to vote to fire the chief executive. That's it. So that's the type of relationship we have that I want to explain, that might be novel to a lot of people, thinking that, oh, if you don't like somebody in the county, you're the supervisor, you can go and fire them. But if you're the supervisor, you're supposed to supervise them, right? It doesn't work that way. So I just want to explain that relationship. And, you know, there's also what they call kind of interference of the public official. In other words, even though I'm a supervisor, I don't get to go to Parks and Rec and say, "Hey, I need that park for my birthday party. You're going to reserve it for me because I'm a supervisor." No. You don't get to do that. As a matter of fact, that would get you into some big trouble, abuse of your power, right? Because your power really is a matter of sitting on the board with the 5 individuals, making votes on issues of policy. The day-to-day stuff really should be handled by the CEO. So that's the system that we have, how we run our democratic process. I hope that's helpful for people to understand how the relationship of the CEO and the Board of Supervisors. And also, in addition to the employee CEO that we get to hire, the county council is also somebody that is also hired directly by the Board of Supervisors. So technically speaking, we're very few employees that's directly hired by the board. So the county council, county exec, those are usually the positions that most supervisors, most board supervisors get to hire. And sometimes maybe the county clerk might be one of those positions that is also under the board supervisors. You know, different counties might have different rules or jurisdiction, but that's an example of how we do it in Santa Clara County.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Lane. We want to welcome back Supervisor Chan. We want to just move, I want to keep the program moving along, and we're going to start with Supervisor Chan on this next question. A lot of the people who have signed up to participate in tonight's webinar are learning about how to work with the county and how to access funding resources to support causes or organizations that they care about. Supervisor Chan, we'll start with you. Can you share with us a little bit about San Francisco's county's budgeting process? And are there particular points in the process where community members can engage and potentially secure resources for organizations or causes that they care about? Supervisor Chan.
Thank you, Wendy. San Francisco is unique in terms of up and down the states, that we are both a city and a county, and that makes the budget process quite different than the other counties, because typically that they will have the city already have the allocated resources and fundings for very specific things, but in the city and county of San Francisco, while it's 14 billion, we have our own enterprise agencies like port, airport, and our utilities, like the San Francisco Public Utilities, which is governing both the water's use and power use. And so with the $14 billion, a lot of it is actually set aside for these, what we call enterprise departments already. They're set by ratepayers, and not much that we can really do about them in terms of spending. They really have a very set of rules, and that's about $7.2 billion worth of it. What is remaining, what we call a general fund, is about $6.8 million in San Francisco, $6.8 billion. And with that remaining of $6.8 billion, that they goes to fire, police, Department of Public Works, Department of Public Health, and in Rec and Park, different kind of city departments. And through that process is really the mayor of the city really has a lot of control over that budget, both in terms of the spending, but also in its proposal. The only time that it comes to the board of supervisors for this process is really during June. We have about a month long a process to go back and forth and negotiate how we like to see some of the spending. But for the most part, we are not really going to change the spending that much. So it is what I would love to see that process kind of change a little bit and create a little bit more transparency and be more inclusive, because technically in that case, our community members need to advocate for themselves year round, meaning they need to meet with the mayor, they need to really meet with different people and city departments advocating for resources if that is what they want, be it for more parks or that they want to see road paving. They will actually need to go to the mayor first, advocating for their needs. And then during the budget process, during June, then they can organize and come to the board of supervisors and asking for that more of those resources. And technically, really during that month of June, it's not really to the entire board of supervisors, but it's really going to come into the budget and finance committee, which I chair. And then that's where people can advocate for their needs to the board of supervisors. And then we do what we can to negotiate with the mayor on your behalf.
Thank you, Supervisor Chan. So it sounds like June is prime time in San Francisco County for advocating for budget resources. So that's helpful to know. Supervisor Tam, what does the budget cycle look like in Alameda County, and when are those opportune times for people to plug in and be part of the process?
It's very similar to, I think, Santa Clara County and San Francisco. We all have to get a budget adopted before the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. And then before that, there's a lot of negotiations that happen, beginning as early as March. And Alameda County has 14 cities. The largest city is Oakland. Second largest is Fremont. Then we have Hayward and the unincorporated areas. The unincorporated areas are like Capital Valley and San Lorenzo. And the county board of supervisors acts as a city government for the unincorporated areas. Basically, we provide their police, their fire, their public works, and their libraries. When I was on the city council, 2/3 of the budget went to public safety, police and fire. Whereas on the board of supervisors, 2/3 of the $4.1 billion goes to health and human services and social services, the two board committees that I'm part of. And it's important to start early because most of our services are provided by community-based organizations. And the county has provisions actually for what we call small, local, emerging businesses. They call it SLEB because we try to give preference to enterprises that are preferably locally, but we can't always do that if there are some very highly specialized skills. Like, for example, the Register of Voters needs a system that only is available in Philadelphia or something like that. So the ideal time is to start as early as the spring in terms of meeting with the department heads, because the department heads have a lot of sway in putting forth the contract that comes before the Board of Supervisors as part of the budget approval.
Got it. Thank you, Supervisor Tam. So spring in Alameda County. So we've got June in San Francisco, spring in Alameda. Supervisor Lee, what about Santa Clara County? When are those opportune times for members of the community to engage on behalf of organizations or causes that they care about?
So first of all, in terms of budgeting, I just want to explain to folks that a lot of times politicians would claim that, oh, we have had 7 balanced budget, you know. Well, guess what? For our counties and cities, balanced budget is state law. We have to balance the budget. The only government that I know that you can run as a deficit of is really our federal government. Because after all, as you know, the federal government does print their own money. So that's they can do their own thing to go into these deficits. But no, but all of us, all our counties by June 30th has to present a balanced budget, right? Or else we cannot operate. By the same token, in terms of the extra, comparatively speaking, so our budget's about this year that we passed, the budget is $11.3 billion just for the Santa Clara County itself. And for just like what Connie mentioned, Lena as well, is that most of the funding has already been obligated. Those are mandatory funding that we have to spend. And as a matter of fact, a lot of those fundings are also reimbursable. So a lot of the revenues that we get, people think from Texas, is not just the Texas. We actually get funding from both the federal and the state government through different pots. And it's a process where people pay the taxes, right? For like the assessors, you pay the property tax. Certainly a lot of county funding is from the county's own share of the property tax, but at the same time, a lot of funding from us, especially when it comes to the Medicare, Medicaid, those type of fundings really comes from the federal government reimbursements and the state as well. Now, the funding that we are talking about for the community groups that we have some discretionary is what we call a process that happens in our county approximately February, March timeframe. We call it the inventory budgeting process, and that each supervisor has the ability to award funding to the 501c3s, usually within their own district, but sometimes we could even award funding outside our districts as well, based on the needs, and very, I would say, fairly broad power. Our board, our office actually very interestingly developed this thing called an urgent grant request. Really is focusing on various things like the unmet needs that we see, like the homelessness, the promoting racial justice, green and for environment. And these are the issues that we felt is important to also highlight. And then through this program, we were able to receive applicants from all over the district. And the philosophy of all 5 different supervisors is very different. Some of our supervisors don't believe in this process and gave nothing a couple of years. There are supervisors who gave very few grants with large amount, like one supervisor in our district, in our county, gave only 5, let's say 5 awards, and they're all exactly $250,000 apiece, right? So the total $1.25 million. Our office actually took the exact opposite approach. We would like to give to as many groups that's deserving as possible, and the amount we give out tends to be a lot smaller, usually around 4 digits or 5 digits, given the fact that we really want to help a lot of the nonprofits that are small to have some seed money to promote whatever seed program that they are trying to develop, using this as a small investment for them to potentially raise more money elsewhere to complete what they want to do and try it out. And then at the end of the day, after they receive the funding, we always go back and check in with them, say, hey, how was it? Was that a success? Was it not successful? And if they prove to be successful, a lot of times they would be able to come back next year and ask for the amount or even more to show us why they need more funding. So our philosophy is a little different. I would have to give a lot of credit actually to our moderator, Winnie Ho, who came up with this idea when we first got in office. And we became the office that a lot of small organizations are coming to us to get the money, whether it's to for the bike coalition, to give funding to help people fix their bicycles, or feeding the unhoused at times, or sometimes a group that came by and buy material to make blankets and jackets to give it to the homeless folks on the encampments. So there's so many different groups that are using these funds, and frankly, I sometimes could not even keep track of all the different groups. And then I still remember one time I was told to go to an event to talk to this group to thank them for the good work, and then instead they thanked me back. And so, why are you thanking me? I said, well, you gave us the funding to do all this work that we're doing. I was, oh wow, thank you. I almost forgot about that. So, but I'm truly grateful and honored to have the opportunity to do that. And I would say this opportunity for us is usually around March, early March timeframe. We'll have the application process being published on our website. And I encourage everybody to put in your application. And sometimes the most important thing I tell you is please do not miss the deadline, because we take our deadline very seriously. If you miss the deadline, you have to wait for next year in order to be fair for those who make the deadline. But most people who do apply do get something from us. So.
Thank you, Supervisor Lee. And as you heard from the supervisor, Santa Clara County seems like it's unique in that the board members actually have their own discretionary funds to be able to provide support to a number of community groups. Supervisor Tam, I see that you've unmuted yourself. If you want to go ahead and comment.
Yeah, Alameda County also has discretionary funding for each of the supervisors, and it's based on a set amount. We get $1 million each year, and then we also have discretionary funding based on how much savings we achieve in our respective offices from staffing and office management costs, and that is separate than the county-wide budget of $4.1 billion. And those are the same kind of criteria that Supervisor Otto Lee described that we use in terms of how we disperse those discretionary funds. And it's the same cycle. You need to let us know what your request is, like around February or March, so that we can build it into our budget. And like recently we gave like $50,000 to the supply bank. All the supervisors each gave that amount to help provide diapers for some of the more indigent community in our districts.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Tam. So that actually is a great segue to this next question. So we've talked about some of the discretionary funds that the supervisors have that can provide grant funding support to community-based organizations in our communities. How do people get information about funding opportunities or opportunities to do business with the county in each of your respective counties? And we'll start with Supervisor Chan.
To say, I think to actually understand, just where we're heading with budget deficit, and in San Francisco particularly, we have about $780 million of budget deficits in the coming years. Things are pretty challenging, but I am definitely optimistic to see, how do we continue to advocate for resources. But I definitely also see that it's hoping to see a more partnership among all counties to really advocate for more fundings from the states. do we have it? I actually like Wendy, your questions, it was skipped a little bit for me in terms of audio. Could you actually like repeat the second half of the entire question
Yes,
for me?
absolutely, Supervisor Chan. How do people get information about these funding opportunities available from your county, or if they're interested in, doing business with county and becoming a vendor, how do they get information about those opportunities?
Yeah, and so actually that's a really great question. So first of all, like we, all our city departments going on to like sfgov.org is sfgov.org. Like that is the website that really going through all the city departments. When they issue an RFP, they will actually have to post it there. You can also contact our city administrator's office under City Administrator Carmen Chu. There's also different types of opportunities for contracts which will be listed there as well. It's really where San Francisco is really going through a process to really figure out how to have a more fair and transparent contract bidding process. What I would love everyone to understand though, to be able to compete for grant or contract in San Francisco, as serving San Francisco residents is definitely key. And if that's what your organization is about, when you're out there and when you're competing for these grants and opportunities, also know that there will be a list to ask of you to be a qualified vendor. So the way that it works is you become a qualified vendors, and then you are within that pool of qualified vendors, you will then compete among them. And typically the qualifications will probably, depending on what kind of contract you're going for, you will have different types of requirements, be it for nonprofit, prevailing wage, it will be one of the key elements, meaning like you paying your workers prevailing wage that is according to San Francisco's standards. So those are the things that will be listed to show you a process of how to become a qualified vendor. So I hope that helps.
Absolutely, Supervisor Chan. And I'd imagine the process is very similar in both Alameda and in Santa Clara County. And I'm going to turn to Supervisor Lee to talk to add anything else about how do people access information about potential funding or business opportunities with the County of Santa Clara. Supervisor Lee?
Yes, it's actually very similar to what was just described by Connie, that yeah, you do need to be qualified as a vendor for the county first, and because of the fact that we do have very explicit and stringent rules, making these are some of the values that we are bringing, so that we certainly don't want vendors that underpaid or have wage theft issues, right, of the employees. And also in terms of just payment, not just but paying minimum wage, we're looking for prevailing wage, some of which like living wage. Those are issues that really are big for our county, making sure that when we are having contracted companies to work for us, that they abide by these very important rules that match our values. So you need to go through that process first. And once you have checked the boxes to make sure that you're a qualified vendor, then you need to watch out when these type of proposal comes out. We call request for proposal, or sometimes RFQ, request for quotations. The fact that you are a minority run business, all those things to give you extra points, and of course by being locally within the county, these are all important things to put down on your application. And also other status like disability or veteran status, those are things that you also get extra points for. Ultimately, I think it's important to make sure that you're not bidding on everything that's being put up. You really need to bid on something that you have some expertise, that this is your business, this is what you're good at doing. And so I think it's important to demonstrate some past performance to show that you have experience doing whatever that you're bidding on. And the amount of services that's gone through this process is actually tremendous. some are many nonprofit organizations get the funding through the county this way, but also many regular like construction companies, whether we talk about building a hospital, building roads or expressway repair, things like that. Those are all projects that we work with many different type of companies. And certainly we do have a preference of folks. We really prefer to have not just company, but company hiring laborers, workers locally within our county, and that's the preference we really provide. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lee. Supervisor Tam, any additional comments?
Similar to San Francisco, we have a listing at acgov.org, and if you pre-qualify through GSA, which is the General Services Administration, to qualify as a small local emerging business, you get an extra point when you compete for some of these RFPs. And I think, like Supervisor Lee mentioned, prevailing wage, making sure you have the appropriate bonding, that's all part of the due diligence. And we have 22 different labor contracts with different labor unions, including the Building Trades Council. And so a lot of that contract work is through a lot of our labor union review.
So I'm going to pivot just a little bit. A number of our participants this evening are immigrants to this country and are probably curious about some of the resources our local counties offer to support our immigrant communities. And so we'll start with Supervisor Tam. Can you share with us some of the resources that Alameda County has for its immigrant population?
Sure. So healthcare is a big part of what the county provides for the immigrant population. Culturally competent, linguistically competent healthcare at Asian Health Services, for example. For the Spanish-speaking immigrant population, we have La Clínica de la Raza, which has a number of clinics throughout the area. And then Native American Health Center, and also Davis Street and San Leandro, they're seeing a lot of immigrants that come from that are Cantonese speaking as well as Spanish speaking and Mandarin speaking. So those resources are available. This came to light especially during the pandemic, where the clinics were the most effective in providing and getting the vaccines and the testing out to our immigrant community. And I hope those resources are something that we can continue to outreach, because we at the county fund those federally qualified healthcare centers very significantly.
Absolutely. I know those community health clinics are absolutely core to our community, and I can't underscore the importance of that culturally humility and linguistically competent services, particularly for our immigrants to this country. I'm going to turn to Supervisor Chan. San Francisco County has historically been known as a county that has welcomed immigrants, and so I would love you to highlight some of the resources that the County of San Francisco offers.
Most definitely. So technically, because San Francisco have what we call a language access ordinance, and so all city services really are required to provide, for the very least, the interpretations and translation available to everyone. So all the any type the language, any language that be it. But we do have our first top three is actually Spanish, and Chinese and Tagalog. Those are our top three languages that we typically provide pretty much throughout in the entire county, that you will see city services are required to have those in their materials, both in person, but also online. And when you actually come through, we actually also have if there's someone at the counter, like for example, county clerk or assessor, which is really rare. If there's someone that's not able to speak the language, particularly for this group, it's either Chinese or any type of Asian languages. If there's not available immediately by a staff, then there will actually be a telephone that will be made available so an immediate translator or interpreter will be available in the communication between you and the staff. But definitely San Francisco also have our office in civic engagement and immigration and immigrant affairs. That is specifically, again, an office that if you have any type of immigration issues or concerns, you can go to them and they will help provide you the connections and services. But if you're talking about more like immigrants' rights and advocacy work, especially those who are seeking asylums, then that will be our Immigrants' Rights Commission. And the commissioners are actually, many of them have the backgrounds of not just being immigrants, but also refugees. So a lot of them can actually give you firsthand support and assistance going through any type of process of either settling in San Francisco or up and down California.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Chan. Supervisor Lee, anything else to add about resources that we have available for immigrants in the County of Santa Clara?
Yes, as the first immigrant supervisor on the board of supervisors that we could figure out on this being an immigrant from Hong Kong, I certainly do share a lot of those immigrant experience and how important language access really is. So the Office of Immigrant Relations at the county is actually providing a lot of really amazing work. So for example, this board has actually voted to provide funding to Ukrainian refugees and also to the Afghan refugees during the time when Afghanistan was being left by the U.S. And with a lot of the Afghan refugees needing the safe space or left behind, they might actually be persecuted. So we have certainly been extremely supportive of providing those resources and funding to back it up with our nonprofit that's giving them the support coming to this country. But in addition to that, I just want to mention we do have a new project, the Immigrant Belonging Project, that our county is now doing. That over the next 2 years, we're going to do a survey of community conversation to learn more what's important to these immigrants. Right now, we're looking at up to 12 different languages. Group that we will be talking to, because each language group might have very different experiences based on where they come from and the barriers that they go through. So we'll be hoping to do this project actually along with UC Berkeley and hope that by this project we'll be able to gather some more current data. I guess the last time this was ever done in our county was like 20 years ago. So we'll help shape the experiences of immigrants in the county for many years to come. So we're really looking forward to this putting together and hopefully we will report out once this is finished and share with all the other counties as well.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Lee. So we're almost at the end of our panel discussion. And so I want to encourage folks, if you haven't already, if you've got a question for the panel, please go ahead and input those questions into the Q&A on the bottom of your Zoom webinar panel. And our last question, I think, is going to be a little bit fun. We're going to do a little bit of a lightning round here, and hopefully that's okay with the supervisors. And so obviously our counties have all sorts of responsibilities. And when I started working for the county, I was like, oh, we do that too. And so as part of our lightning round, I want to hear from each of you, what is one county department audience members would be surprised to learn about that your county has, or a unique county department that may be just very intrinsic and just very critical for your county. So again, kind of not what you would expect a county to do, or what one county department that is very unique to your particular jurisdiction. And we'll start with Supervisor Lee.
I guess for me was the vector control as part of the county's function. As you know, we've heard about the Blue Nile virus with the mosquitoes and vector control, the ability to provide, where they're spraying or knowing where these birds or whatnot are. This is completely a county function. Of course, it's very important to protect the public health of everybody, but certainly chasing the animals and chasing insects wasn't something that I thought that county would be doing.
Supervisor Tam, same question, lightning round. One county department you're surprised that that your county has?
A group that deals with bike and pedestrian issues specifically. You would think that would come under public works, but that has become a very important issue throughout the county, and especially in the unincorporated areas, because frankly, I think most of you know that Supervisor Wilma Chan, passed away from a traffic accident. And there's been a concerted effort to try to improve bike lanes and making sure we have adequate and acceptable pedestrian access.
Safe routes, absolutely. Supervisor Chan, one unique county department that San Francisco County has.
I wouldn't call it a department, but it's unique. I would think that only San Francisco would have it, is our city archivist, which is, and city archivist is, because we're both city and county, so it's a city archivist, actually keeps records of the entire city's history since its formation. So I think that's probably a one unique one that I would call it a luxury, but again, but also actually a must needed for a city and county like.
Great. Thank you, supervisors, for indulging me in that very quick lightning round. We're going to go ahead and shift to the Q&A from the audience, and we've got a couple of questions that are queued up, and I'll go ahead and let's see. Some of these we've already answered a little bit, but perhaps we can reinforce some of those answers. And so we have a participant tonight who has asked a question about funding that might be available from each of the counties to support nonprofits that offer assistance to individuals with special needs. And so off the top of your head, I'll go ahead and open up the floor to see if any of the supervisors are aware of funding opportunities for organizations that work with individuals with special needs in particular.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a nonprofit called Family of Children with Special Needs right here in our area from Fremont and also Santa Clara County as well. And that's also one group that through our urgent program, we've actually helped fund that organization through that inventory process. But certainly the kids with special needs or individuals with special needs is something that's really important to be early diagnostic. So this is something our county push really hard in order to not just put funding, put getting program, but getting funding to make sure that these type of testing are being made available to our school kids at various grade levels, so that the sooner they get diagnosed, whatever those special needs are, the sooner they can get the treatment, and more likely that those a lot of learning disabilities could be discovered, so that they could get in the journey of real learning early on. The earlier, the better. So that's something that our county certainly support very strongly. I'm sure same as my colleagues here.
Supervisors Tam or Chan?
There's
Go
some
ahead.
overlap with Supervisor Lee with Friends of Children with Special Need that Dr. Albert Wang and Anna Wang had founded in Fremont. And so some of the supervisors, particularly Supervisor Halbert, that's in his district, I think he's allocated some funding. In my district, we've allocated funding for some of the healthcare centers that provide specific help for those with disabilities and with special needs.
Supervisor Chen?
In the city and county of San Francisco, what we have is really our Department of Children, Youth, and their families, so what we call a DCYF, and that's where all the grant opportunities goes with all types of families and children that actually have special needs, not just but just really even dyslexia, and that really is a department where they will show you a whole list of programming that could provide that kind of support.
Absolutely. So thank you for that, Supervisor Chan. I'll just add, for most of the counties, those funding opportunities may be available through their social services agency. So And again, there is usually for each of our counties, there's one consolidated website where all those funding opportunities are made available. And so that actually is another one of the questions that we received here. It would help if I was unmuted. Good grief. It's been a long day, folks. So as I was saying to myself, a lot of those funding opportunities may for individuals with special needs may come through county social service agencies. And so one of the questions that has also come up as part of the Q&A is what all of those funding opportunities to work with the various county departments may be consolidated on one county website or bid portal for each of our counties. And so one of those questions that we've gotten tonight, and I know Supervisors Tam and Chan did reference the website address for their respective county counties. And so the question is where to search for the grant resources. What is the name of the website? So again, we'll start with Supervisor Tam if you want to go ahead and just give a shout out for the Alameda County website.
acgov.org.
Perfect. And Supervisor Chan?
It's sfgov.org, so it's sfgov.
Perfect. And Supervisor Lee? If you can, there you go. You can unmute. There you go.
Yeah, it's very similar. So it's Santa Clara County. So it's sccgov.org, sccgov.org. That's our website.
Great. And we'll see if Michelle and the folks at the Society of Heart's Delight can maybe send a follow-up email with a lot of the links that have already been included in the chat about how to contact each of the supervisors. And also we can try to make sure that we put out the websites for each of the county governments. Okay, let's see, that we've got similar questions, where to find announcements for those grants. That's all going to be on those county websites. So we have another question in the chat. The schools in New York City recently adopted breath work as an integrated part of mandatory school programming to support the mental well-being of kids, citing primary research from Stanford. This person is interested in promoting a similar program at schools here as a parent and as a community member that cares about helping kids with coping mechanisms to support their mental well-being. What can I do to go about pursuing that, those programs? And so great question. And so again, if I'm distilling this question down, it's really about how to integrate kind of a more holistic approach to mental health as part of regular school curriculum. So with that, I'm not sure if who wants to take a first pass at answering that particular question.
Sure. So for the county, we also have a county board of education as well, which is another body of elected officials that support our schools. However, as we all know, that the funding from the state of California to the schools, the high schools and elementary school, really is for K through 12 basic curriculum. A lot of the stuff that is needed, like in this case, we talk about, let's say, after school programs like arts and sports, or in this case, mental health counseling. These are things that are not necessarily sufficiently provided by the state or from the county. So a lot of times I would say work with the county board, but at the same time, I do believe that us as a county board of supervisors do have a role to play, and that we would be able to, we've called proposals or bills or referrals to provide these type of programs. A lot of times when one of the things I would tell people is I don't necessarily want to have the, everything has become from my idea. I like to look at other good ideas. I look at Alameda County, I look at San Francisco, I look at San Diego, I look at LA, say, hey, that program sounds like it's a great idea. Why don't we look at doing the same thing as well? So I think it's important to be able to introduce these to your county supervisors so that they would see that, aha, this is a good program, and maybe you should do a pilot program and try it as well. So that's how usually things start in our county.
Thank you, Supervisor Lee. Supervisor Tam or Chan, additional comments here?
In Alameda County, each of the school districts that I talked to have put together a more concerted effort following the pandemic on mental health care, especially for our youth because of the isolation and there's a lot of emotional issues that came out because of the pandemic. And so they put a concerted effort. The funding for a lot of the mental health care services is also available through the county, through Medi-Cal and Medicaid. And in my area, the city of Oakland and the city of Alameda, we have what they call a collaborative between the county, the school district, and the city. And we also have family services and resource centers that help provide the outreach on the availability of mental health care, especially for our youth.
Great. Thank you, Supervisor Tam. All right. I'm going to ask a question I think that is absolutely relevant and to a lot of what all of you have shared tonight about really how to pursue funding opportunities and what are some of those metrics for success. So we have one participant tonight who's asked, how do the counties measure an organization's success when considering providing funding or a contract to them? And we'll see who wants to answer this one. Supervisor Tam, I see that you've unmuted. Go ahead.
A lot of the metrics for success, measuring success, is built into the contract in terms of accounting for the number of cases that you've gone through, the cases that have been successful, especially for a lot of our community-based organizations. And then obviously with conventional contracts, there are specific deliverables and performance measures, particularly when it comes to a lot of the capital projects and public works type contracts. Is that getting at the question more specifically?
I would argue yes, but and I would just add, and feel free, Supervisors Lee and Chan, to chime in that yes, all of that is typically baked into the contract, but at the point of the request for proposals, they actually usually include as part of the bid packet kind of scoring criteria, right, for evaluating proposals for funding. So all of that is usually disclosed at not only at the point of application, but once the contract is executed, there are also metrics for reporting and again, continued potential funding or extensions of funding. So Supervisor Shan or Lee, additional comments there? No? All right. I'm gonna add, we've got probably time for one or two more questions here because I do want to give Michelle a little bit of time to close us out. Is there funding from the county or the city to support receiving treatments for families with depression or autism? Good question. I'm not entirely sure. And so Supervisor Tam, you've unmuted.
So I serve on the Board of Governors of the Alameda Alliance for Health, which is the largest Medi-Cal provider, managed care plan provider for the county. And we have a representative and we continue to have a slot with someone who's very much an advocate to make sure that there's adequate treatment and diagnosis of autism. And so that is built into a lot of the work that we contract through mental health care organizations, whether it's Seneca, some of the larger ones, and telehealth. And so those organizations have specialists that deal specifically with autism, and it's a spectrum issue, obviously, and so they have specific skills that will be actually provided through the county's funding effort through their contracts with the county.
Great. Supervisor Lee, I see you leaning in. Do you want to add additional comments there? You don't have to. It's okay if you. Okay. All right. So we do have, and I'll have this be our final question of the evening. We have a question here. I believe the participant was asking, how do we find information about different programs that our cities or counties offer? And so I'll just kind of start us off, and I would say each of your county supervisors' offices are a great resource. If you don't know where to start with your county, you start with your county supervisor and they can help direct you to the appropriate entity. And so as someone who has to respond to those type of questions from constituents all the time, we're always happy to be a resource. And so I know in the chat, there is information about how to contact each of our offices. I would encourage you to do so. We are a breadth of knowledge, I would argue, in support of each of our supervisors. And so we are happy to provide any support or direction that you may need to try to navigate your particular inquiry to the right county entity. And if it's not a county issue, we can also make referrals to other levels of government. We're very happy to do that. So just feel free to reach out to us. We can be a one-stop shop, but if ever in doubt, you start with one of our offices. And so, supervisors, I didn't want to take that away from you, but as staff, I felt like that was a little bit more of an appropriate question for me to answer. So I apologize. With that, why don't we give our panel a round of applause? Yay! And we can't see those who are still on the webinar, but I'm sure they are clapping silently from home. And I'm going to actually turn it over back to Michelle to make some closing announcements on behalf of the Society of Heart's Delight.
Thank you, Wendy. You're such a great moderator. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, talking about the resources, I can tell my experience from my own story. Like, you have to just check out the website, the official website. There are tons of resources there, and all these supervisors are on all these social media platforms. They're even on nextdoor.com. There's a one grants opportunity. I saw it on nextdoor.com. You know, they're everywhere. So we are so thankful to our supervisors here to take time to share all this information and knowledge with us. And we are really lucky to live in a place where our local representative take time to listen to us, to serve us. So I'd like to close this session with our upcoming events. So we have like 6 DEI diversity, equity and inclusion workshops coming up, including we are covering like topics like systemic racism, LGBTQ inclusion, and gender equity, and unconscious bias. So our very first one will be launched next Thursday, 5 p.m. Please follow our Society of Heart's Delight on our social media. Well, we already have our poster out. Please come to our DEI workshops. I guarantee you will have great experience. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. It's late at night. Yeah, have a great night. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, hope to see all of you very soon. Good night.
Good night, everybody.